Hi guys, this is Amit Bhardwaj and today we are going to discuss about front-end architecture. So there is a lot of confusion around UI architecture, like what should we include as a part of architecture and what is the ideal architecture for front-end. So I have tried to include all the aspects of any good architecture. So let's give it a try. Okay, so let's start from the user perspective. So when user enter anything in the browser, suppose abc.com, so what happens behind the scene and how the UI architecture is formed. Um, so first, whenever somebody is asking you about front-end architecture, so there are some parameters which we need to confirm. So are we going to do the client-side rendering or server-side rendering? So that is the first aspect we need to be aware about. So client-side rendering is something where uh, you get all the asset of the application on the client side on the browser, and after that the rendering is done on the browser side. You don't make any other request to server directly through the web page, but you just interact with the EJAX request. So that is client side rendering. Server side rendering is something where whole page is rendered on the server side, and after that it is served to browser. And after that, single page versus multi-page application. So when we do the client side rendering, then we form different pages. So basically this is called single page application because it is rendered only once from the server, and after that pages are formed on the front end only, on the browser only. And in multi-page, basically every page is formed, every different page when you basically change the URL of the application, so every page is formed on the server side, and after that it is served to browser. And monolithic versus micro front end, where uh, for your front end application, suppose you have different pages. You are on product list page, you are on checkout page, after that you are on payment page, right? So every different page can be a separate application, a separate micro front end application. There's different ways to implement the micro front end. There can be polyrepo approach, there can be monorepo approach, or a monolithic front end is something where you have whole front end code in basically one application, and you do the you make different pages according to your routing. So that is something these are the factors which you should be aware about before going any uh, front end architecture. So let's discuss about the client side rendering because this is the most used approach these days. So uh, so uh, suppose you enter anything in the browser abc.com, and after that what happens, the after the DNS reach all the IP address and the request is sent to server. So server serve you index.html, and index.html has reference to some assets, suppose your JavaScript files, your CSS files, images, fonts. So those assets are requested from browser, and after that they are served from server, and you get all the assets, all the required assets to run your application on the browser. So after that your application is initialized on the browser, and your basically underlying framework like suppose Angular, React, that comes into picture, where you do the routing of the application based on the URL. Suppose you have the URLs checkout or suppose payment. So depending on that, you redirect to the different route of the application. Okay, so I have just used this app module, which is basically the application module, where all the necessary library, shared modules, and configuration files are injected. So they are basically defined on the application level. So that's why they are injected here. And any of the suppose from the CSS perspective, uh, any CSS preprocessor you are using, SAS, less, or any library you are using. Bootstrap, Angular Material. So all that those are basically application level things and are injected in the app module only. After that, there's one layer basically, which is called guard actually. So this layer define the authentication and authorization of your application. Suppose you are typing the uh, checkout, you're going to particular checkout page. So basically, this guard layer will make sure that you have the proper authentication and authorization to enter into to this page. So every page will be guarded uh, with the for the user to check the required credentials. All right. After that, we have different pages. So these modules are basically indicating the page, uh, the URL on the application. Um, and they are basically the independent modules. And uh, so suppose let's take the example of this checkout module. So suppose we are on a checkout page, as checkout, and here uh, one page is composed of different components. uh, those components can be different files, or part of different libraries, different module, other module, basically shared module. So you need to inject different modules as well into your feature module. Suppose we have this checkout page, and we have shipping address component, we have payment method listing component, we have coupon component, we have order listing component. So this is something which define a page. It is composed of multiple components, and how the communication happens between two components is something which we need to be aware about, like how we are going to communicate between different components. Suppose I enter the shipping address, and after that, uh, only after entering the shipping address, my next section, payment method listing, will be enabled. So once I fulfill this shipping address, then only this component will tell the other component, payment component, that yeah, we are good to go. These kind of validations and this kind of communication is part of any page. So just giving you the general overview. Okay, so that is what is inside a page. And now suppose I move to the next page after the checkout. So suppose, or we can say, suppose this was the product page, product listing page or product page, and after that I selected the product and I move to checkout page. So there is something which is basically data handoff. So how the data is transferred from one page to another page. So that is something very good aspect from the UI perspective, that how we are going to hand off the data between two pages on UI. Because uh, your route is changed and you need to transfer the data from one page to another page. So there are different ways where we can hand off the data. So one is the you can make use of services or routing data. So these are instance variable. You can make use of instance variables, and after that data will be transferred from one page to another page. Or you can but what will happen in this case, the page refresh will not be supported. Suppose you refresh the next page, so you will lose all the data from the previous page. uh, Another approach is browser storage, where local storage or session storage can be used for data handoff. But and that will remove the first issue, but still cache or storage, browser storage invalidation is another challenge, where we need to uh, be sure, like at what point of time we need to clear the storage. uh, Third way can be backend way, where we are storing the suppose we are on this page, product page, and user select some product, and after that we are making an API request to backend to inform that yeah, this data is selected by this particular user. And when we move to next page, then we make an API call from backend, and we fetch the data which was saved on the earlier page. So this is something backend way of data handoff. All right. After that, This is the service layer. Basically this is the UI only. And so why I have used this client layer is uh, to define that all the interaction which is happening with backend should be from one common point or from common service, because there would be some factors like we are passing the JWT token, uh, or some custom headers in every request. So instead of sending it from different pages for uniformity, we are using this client HTTP service layer. So that you can include or exclude anything. You can do the request transformation, you can do the response transformation, you can do the error handling as well. So it is similar to HTTP interceptor, but uh, some more custom layer on the top of that. uh, okay, and after that we are this is something backend where we are calling the API gateway. We are calling the different backend services. Okay, so other aspects are from UI perspective, what we should do. So we should fetch all our static content from CMS, content management system, where our labels, static content, the error message, whatever we are showing should be part of CMS only. Because suppose you change something, you want to change some content, so you just go to CMS and change the content. You don't need to deploy your whole application again. So that is something benefit of CMS. uh, Again, after that we have CDN, content delivery network, where we are um, basically serving our static assets like images, CSS from CDN only. So this give us the benefit of edge locations, where it reduce the latency of the application. And we get the benefit of caching as well with the help of CDN. uh, yeah, so there's one more aspect where we are using different shared modules. You can see here shared module 1, shared module 2. The reason for that is that it is always better to have different shared module, because shared module is uh, commonly injected in every module. So what will happen, when your application grow, the shared module also grows. So it becomes very heavy after some time, and your application performance will be impacted badly. So it is always better to have different shared modules according to functionalities. So suppose my checkout module need only this shared module too. So it will not, I don't need to inject it here, right? So I will basically uh, reduce the JS size of this module. So that is something which is best beneficial from the application performance. uh, okay, and after that, the monitoring is something which we should enable for our application. So you can use different monitoring tools like New Relic, and for analytics you can use Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics. So that should be implemented as a part of your application. So majorly this is included into index.html, or we can enable some custom metrics as well in our code. uh, okay, after that we have some NFR should be taken care, like security. Your application should support security, the most common attacks, cross site, uh, CSR, and cross site scripting. So uh, your built-in framework should support that, basically script injection, all these things. So you need to talk about security. After that, authentication, authorization, which mechanism are you using for this? Suppose you are getting the JWT token from backend, and after that you are storing the token on front end. So how frequently you are refreshing that token, what is session timeout. You need to take care of all these aspects, and you need to guard your pages with proper, basically authentication authorization mechanism. You should use proper guards. uh, After that, the performance is very important aspect of any application. So you should keep your application light. uh, you should use a minimum, your bundle size basically is first thing which you should take care. So bundle and when you run the build, so you get some JS files, so your bundle size will be small. You should enable the lazy loading and code splitting, all these techniques. uh, After that, the runtime performance is something, suppose in Angular you are taking care of chain detection strategy, you are unsubscribing the observables, so these are some uh, runtime performance issue of any application. Accessibility is very important for any application, so you should write the HTML semantic in a correct way. You should take care all the uh, good coding practices, and after that you should uh, test your application with any accessibility tool like X, Wave, or whatever is requirement for you. And the service worker is something which you can talk about, if you want to make your application as a progressive web app, then you can make use of service workers. uh, from the coding standard point of view, you can or definition of done, so you should have the responsiveness in your application, where you should uh, write the mobile first or desktop first approach for your code. And you should test your application on all the devices. Linting code formatting, you should follow linting or code formatting in your application. uh, Unit testing, this is very important aspect, unit testing, so you should use any tool for that. You should use any framework, unit testing framework like Jest or Jasmine, whatever you are comfortable with. So your unit testing should be there. And to end testing, you can use Cypress for that, or you can use Protector. uh, After that, you should implement the git hooks in your application, where you could uh, escape the accidental commit of code, which can break the build or break the whole system. So git hooks, proper git hook should be there. You should be aware some CI/CD pipelines and how to set up it for UI project. So that is something which you can talk about. You should be aware about Webpack as well, because there might be some works in front end which should be done with the help of Webpack or any other tool like Rollup or Browserify. Uh, this is uh, all about front end, which I can see for now. Yeah, on the backend side, you have one API gateway. So API gateway is something where you interact with from front end. You will be given some URL, suppose for your API, suppose you user slash login. So you will be hitting this API gateway, and it will be redirecting your request to, suppose, user. So it will be, this is the user microservice, so it will be redirecting to user service. And suppose you get another request, suppose product slash something, then it will be redirected to another microservice, depending on your URL. And after that, there is load balancer, and you have multiple instances of your services running, where after that you have a caching layer, and uh, after that your request is interacting with DB. So this is something very high level of backend overview. uh, yeah, so this is all about front end. If I have missed something, then please let me know. Thank you.